welcome to another edition of Wildcat Country. Eric Cohen and Shane Dale. And Shane, we had such good momentum going. Everything was going great. We beat FCS Power North Dakota State.
Huge.
And we all thought that we were going to beat Cal. And then, I mean, if it were up to me, Shane, I wouldn't want to, I would just not talk about it.
Well, here's the thing, Eric. I don't think any of us are either. I don't think either of us and most people listening are surprised that Arizona's 2-2 right now.
Correct.
I think maybe we're a little surprised at how they got there. And the fact is, look, we reevaluate our expectations for our college football team. Everyone does every single week, because every week something else happens, and every game is so important because there's so few of them. We're thinking the 2-1 start looked sharp on the road against San Diego State, beat a very legitimately good North Dakota State team, even though it was a close game. You're thinking, okay, this is a game they should win at Cal, and I still think they should. I think Arizona is a more talented team than Cal, but
yes.
It was a letdown, and I think Arizona's still not a very good football team. Okay, they have a lot of promise, a lot of potential. I don't think they're, and we'll get into some stats here in a little while during our buy or sell segment. But I think they have a longer ways to go than maybe some of us think. They've looked sharp at times. At times they've fallen flat on both sides of the ball, especially on defense, which I know we'll get into. So they have a long way to go. And I think it's just a reminder that this is a young, inexperienced team that's still coming together, and we need to temper our expectations.
Well, we're going to have our buddy Barrett Baker join us once again. He was awesome a few weeks ago.
Fantastic analysis, yes.
Yeah, after the San Diego State game. I mean, if you and I were getting angry watching this team try to tackle on defense, I can only imagine what Barrett Baker, who is a special teams captain, thought in watching. I mean, it was like you and I trying to make tackles, air tackles. I mean, at least me. I don't know if you're a tackler or not, but I mean, it was dreadful. It was a dreadful performance.
Yeah,
really
giving up two runs of over 70 yards. And even without that, Cal's lead rusher, I think, still had over 100 yards.
278 yards, Shane.
Yeah, that's...
For a guy who the hell is this guy?
Cal's offense is not very good,
no.
and Arizona made it look elite, and that's a problem for sure.
All right, let's get right into it. Buy or sell. It's presented by our friends at Ice Shaker. Shane's going to hold up his Ice Shaker. If you're watching on the video, you can go to iceshaker.com and buy one of these beautiful things. At as I said, iceshaker.com. Use promo code Wildcat Country, capital W, capital C, and get $5 off. How about that? Great deal. And thanks to our buddy Chris Gronkowski, and hopefully we have him and maybe his brother Rob on at some point.
We're still bugging Chris about that. We need to get Rob on at some point.
Apparently, his other brother Glenn is big on the TikTok these days. By the way, crushing it on the TikTok.
Well, I'm glad that each Gronkowski brother is keeping busy in his own way.
They all are. Okay, all right. Buy or sell number one. Shane, keep this one simple. Buy or sell defensive coordinator Johnny Nansen.
Well, you know what? And full disclosure, I came up with this question, but I'm going to pull an Eric Cohen and I'm going to hold it on this one because I think it's too early to say. Look, there's a lot of warning signs, a lot of bad signs that this defense is going in the wrong direction. And our buddy Blair Willis noted Arizona's allowed more yards per play in each game they played so far, from 4 against San Diego State, 5.8 against Mississippi State, 7.1 against North Dakota State, and then almost 9.1 against Cal. Their 9.31 yards per carry against Cal was I'm reading this now, the worst single game rush defense average in school history. That's from Brian Peterson and the Arizona Desert Swarm came up with that. So
great stat.
Yeah. So it hasn't been good. And I think the 6 turnovers that Arizona forced in the first 3 games of the season sort of covered up a lot of those deficiencies. They made enough plays, the 4th down stops against North Dakota State, some of the turnovers they caused, to really cover up some of those things, but it's getting worse. It's gotten worse. I got more stats I'm going to throw at you here in a little while, but I'll let you respond first.
All right. I'm going to buy, actually. I know it's kind of crazy right now, considering the stats that you just mentioned, that Arizona has been progressively getting worse. But you know what? This defense is playing hard. Played hard for 3 games. It was not a very good performance against Cal.
No.
With that said, you look at other Arizona teams, even Rich Rod's teams would always have that dud performance every year where they give up 49, 63 to Washington State. How many times? All right. What happened on Saturday was bad, but I'm not going to overreact to it. It's not a big buy, but it's a bye. I'm not going to vilify Johnny Nansen yet after one game. Now,
no.
If Arizona loses to Colorado or the game is close, I will put this question in there next week.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. But look, Arizona they didn't improve as much on defense as they did on offense in the offseason. So we have to remember that. They did have a defensive coordinator change. A lot of the guys came to play for Don Brown, and he's gone. And for some other guys, it's the third defensive coordinator in as many seasons.
Sure.
So you have to consider that as well. It's Johnny Nathan's first year as a defensive coordinator. And even if he's going to have success in that role, it's probably going to take a while. So that's why I'm holding. Because, I mean, look, the result against Cal was unacceptable, and I'm sure Johnny Nansen would be the first to say that. But it is 4 games into his tenure, just like it's really 4 games into Jed Fisher's tenure with this offense. So with that in mind, I think holding for now, I think is the fair thing to do.
Okay, fair. My buy is essentially a hold, but I just want to give it a buy just to disagree with you.
Sure.
Right? Okay,
sure.
fair. Okay, number 2, let's not blame the defensive scheme. Just let's face the facts, Shane. Arizona simply isn't that talented on defense by yourself.
I'll buy it. Yeah. For now that they are, and I did some digging, they're the second worst team in the conference in yards allowed, second worst in rushing yards allowed. Now Colorado's often typically the worst in those categories, but they've given up 9 passing touchdowns, which is tied for the most in the Pac-12. They've only recorded 5 sacks, and they're last in opponent passer rating. So all that adds up to they're lucky to be 2-2. If you just look at the stats, really on both sides of the ball, but especially on defense, you think they were fortunate to be 2-2. I don't want us to turn into just dumping on the Wildcats after we sung their praises last week.
Yeah,
but they're so much better than last year. Let's please get that straight.
Yes,
but they have so far to go, and this is year 2 in a rebuilding process. And like Jed Fish said, and I kind of agree with him, this is really year 1 of his head coaching tenure in a way, because last year there were scraps for him to work with. And I agree with him on that.
You know, I think part of the negativity this week amongst the fan base is the fact that Arizona was up 24-21 at halftime.
Sure.
And we're thinking, all right, you know what? The defense isn't playing great, but the offense is doing its part. And then what happened? It was a disaster in the second half. So yeah, I'm going to buy this one. The talent on defense probably isn't there. There needs to be more of their guys Jed's and Johnny's guys that are brought in. You know, I don't think the scheme was great, but the talent certainly wasn't there. So once again, this is a lukewarm buy. I mean, obviously you can blame scheme a little bit, you know, giving up 280 yards. I'm sure there are plenty of defensive coordinators with this particular talent that would not allow anywhere near that. So let's be honest. I mean, their run defense against North Dakota State was bad. The run defense against Cal was horrendous.
Yep.
What's it going to be against Colorado? I guess we'll find out.
They do have the worst rushing offense in the Pac-12. I mean, they have the worst of most things. They do have 3 guys who average more than 4 yards per carry, but overall they are the worst in the Pac-12 in rushing yards total and rushing yards per carry. So really no excuse not to improve upon those numbers this week.
Number 3, offensively, outside of Jaden DeLora forcing a few throws in the second half when Arizona fell behind, there wasn't much to complain about offensively I said offensively twice. On offense, there wasn't much to complain about on Saturday other than those DeLora throws by yourself.
I'm going to sell it. I don't want this to be, I'm dumping on Arizona hour, but Arizona, they didn't do enough on either side of the ball, on defense especially, but you know, football's still a simple game, Eric. They led the takeover or the turnover. I say takeaway and turnover. The turnover battle last week against North Dakota State, and they won the game, and that's why they won the game. They lost because they were -3 in that category against Cal. I mean, the defense was terrible, but Cal scored touchdowns after each Arizona turnover. So, and as far as Jaden DeLora, you know, good and bad, you know, Pro Football Focus has said that Jaden DeLora had the most big-time throws among Power 5 quarterbacks this past week with 8. No one else had more than 5. So that's something. I'm not a big Pro Football Focus guy, but that's still something. With that said, Jaden DeLora is 10th out of 11 eligible quarterbacks in the Pac-12 in passer rating and completion percentage. The only one worse in each category, Emory Jones at ASU. He's thrown 8 touchdowns, but he's also thrown 6 interceptions, which is tied with Chance Nolan at Oregon State for the most in the conference. The offensive line, I thought, they played well to start the game. I think Cal kind of won the chess match there eventually. And I think that the running game was good, but not great. I think they're going to miss at least the option of having Speedy Luke out there, who's going to miss a few weeks. So I don't want to go full Debbie Downer here after, 2-2 is probably about where we figured they would be, if not better. But I think there's a lot of concerns on both sides of the ball, certainly more on defense, but I wasn't thrilled with the offense either, especially in the second half.
536 total yards, Shane. I'm buying that all day. Arizona, 2 100-yard receivers. Tanner McLaughlin at tight end had 89, T-Mac 59, Cowling 133.
Receivers are great. Eric, the receivers are great.
Michael Wiley, 79 rushing, 135 rushing, 401 passing.
Yeah.
I mean, I know the turnovers aren't great, but I'm still buying it. It's way better than last year.
I agree 100% with that, Eric. But a lot of times in games when you're down by 2 or 3 scores in the fourth quarter, and a lot of times the team that loses or is on that losing side will have more yards because they're trying to make up in the end of the game. And the opposing defense will kind of give them 5 yards here, 10 yards there. So I think it's a bit of a misnomer. Yes, light years better than last year. I still like Jaden DeLora long-term. I still like their offense long-term, but I think they could have done more in this game as well. And it was a team effort. This loss was a team effort, more on the defensive side of the ball, but I have concerns with the offense as well.
Number 4, buy or sell. This Saturday could, Shane, and I emphasize the word could, be Arizona's last winnable game of 2022. Buy or sell.
I'm keeping with the theme here, Eric. I'm going to buy it. Absolutely.
Whoa.
Well, no, wait a minute. I didn't say it will be. You asked if it could be. Look at the schedule. Look at the schedule. Yes, absolutely. It could be. After Colorado, I would say as of this moment, and always subject to change, that the easiest team on their schedule, the most likely win, is Arizona State. And
correct.
Of course, between now and Thanksgiving, that who knows what that situation is going to be in terms of momentum and injuries and all that stuff. But we've talked about the schedule, Eric. After Colorado, it gets tough. UCLA, Oregon, Washington, USC, Utah, Washington State looks tough as nails. They should have won that game against Oregon. So yeah, absolutely. It could be. We could, if they beat Colorado, we could be looking at 6 straight losses going into the Territorial Cup game. I'm going to guess they're going to try find a way to win more than that. But you're asking could? Absolutely. It could be their last win in a long time.
I'm going to sell it just because I practically have guaranteed a win against ASU. So yes, I mean, Arizona's going to win that game. ASU may not win another game the rest of the year. I mean, you can use this question for ASU, and I think it's comparable. I think for Arizona, they're going to upset somebody.
Yeah,
whether it's a UCLA, maybe it's Oregon next week. Maybe
they like
maybe
to do that against Oregon.
Changes.
Historically, they've done that. How many times have they upset Oregon over the years?
I don't think Oregon is all that special. I know they're ranked number 13 in the country. I'm personally not all that impressed with them. I know they had a nice comeback win against Washington State the other day. I'm not buying into it. I think Arizona will have multiple opportunities to win games, and I think we'll get to this a little bit later on, but quite a few more wins are on the table. This will not be it cannot be Arizona's last win of 2022.
We're not disagreeing on this. I'm basing this on the could part of your question.
Yes, I understand.
Absolutely, it could be their last win.
Number 5, Shane, there are no excuses not to cover the 17 and a half, 18-point spread against Colorado on Saturday. The Buffs are just that bad.
I'll buy that one. I think so. I mean, I guess it's a different question as to whether they will, but as far as no excuses, yeah, they should. I mean, I think the roles are kind of flipped from last year's game in Boulder, where Colorado wasn't very good, but they were better than Arizona, which was by far the worst team in the conference. And now the roles have kind of flipped. Arizona's still not very good, but yes, they should win this game at home, and they should win comfortably. So yes, if UCLA can go on, and I don't think UCLA is that good. If they can go on the road and beat the Buffs by 28 points, and probably could have beaten them by more if they wanted to.
Yep.
Arizona should be able to beat them at home by what you said, 18 points is the line right now?
Yeah.
18.
Or it's 17 right now. It's a gift. So okay. I haven't done this all year, but I looked on Sunday. This is the first time I did it. And I looked at the lines. I had an expectation in my head of what the line for Arizona, Colorado should be, in my opinion, just based on watching Colorado, what I've seen of them in 4 weeks, and watching Arizona. And I put the line around 24. When the line came out, I guess it was 13 or something. And then it normalizes. That usually the first lines are always crazy. And it's normalized around 17 and a half. I feel like this is a gift. Now I'll give my score prediction, as will you, at the end of the program. We're going to get the straight up pick right. Arizona's not losing to Colorado. The Buffaloes, I believe, are the first Pac-12 team in first NC FBS Power 5 team since like 1957 to lose all 4 of their first games by 25 or more points.
Yeah. Well, do you remember around this time last year, Eric, how sure we were that Arizona was going to lose to Northern Arizona? You just never know.
Shane, this team is not even in the same stratosphere as that team last year. This Colorado team arguably is worse than 2021 Arizona. They're not winning a game. It's not happening.
That's a low bar. I don't know. It's comparable. Well, but to your point, Eric, Arizona was competitive in some of their early games, or some of their games throughout the season last year. I mean, the first game against BYU, it was a 1-possession game. So, and then the wheels just came off later in the year. So I'll concede your point on that.
I mean, this is a really, really like historically bad Colorado team. There are no excuses for Arizona to not name their score on Saturday. And it's, by the way, the last time that Arizona beat an FBS team at Arizona Stadium, I mean, that I was there, was UCLA with you.
It was still the UCLA game.
Yeah, last year against Cal. But
wow.
But think about it. I mean, I still haven't seen an FBS win at Arizona Stadium in a long time. I haven't seen a Power 5 Arizona win in general since that game with you in 2019.
Since this decade.
Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. So let us hope that that Saturday changes that. Bonus question, Shane, is I always like to throw this in there.
Mm-hmm.
I know this is cliche, but I'm going to throw it at you. And it's just going to be 3 words. Arizona bowl game. Buy or sell?
At this point, I'd have to sell. I mean, if they were to beat Cal, I think we would both agree that they're probably a good prospect for a bowl game. They'd be looking at 4-1 this weekend. But I think that the path to 4-5 in the Pac-12 is doable, but I thought they had to include a win over Cal. So, look, the schedule never plays out the way we expect it's going to. There's going to be some surprises. There's going to be a great team right now that collapses, a team that's toward the bottom right now that shoots up to, in the last month of the season. Maybe that'll be Arizona, but I can't, after seeing especially their defense, Eric, against Cal, I can't imagine at this point them getting to a bowl game. They beat Colorado and then they upset Oregon, then we'll have that discussion again.
I am going to hold this one, surprisingly. Now, I know Arizona looked dreadful last week, but I still think there's a reasonable path to 6 wins. You win this week, you pull an upset at some point in the 5 games that we've discussed, whether it's Oregon. I mean, let's put it this way. They're not beating USC, they're not beating Utah, and they're not beating Washington. I mean, I really think we'll get into this later in the show with our picks, but I don't think they're beating any of those teams. In fact, I think all 3 games probably will be ugly. With that said, I think UCLA and Oregon are winnable games. I would probably put UCLA above Oregon because I think UCLA is about to fall apart starting this week.
I actually agree with you on that. I think UCLA, they're the biggest undefeated fraud in the country right now.
I mean, when you beat South Alabama by 1 point, Arizona's beaten South Alabama by more than that at home. I'm telling you that. No argument here. So if there's a path there, and then if you can go and beat Washington State at home, let's say there's a little bit of momentum. Maybe you don't get blown out by Utah. You get Washington State at home. Then I think ASU, I hate to use the word, but I think ASU might, by the end of the season, Shane, be a layup. I think this team is just going to quit.
Well, that game is never a layup. Never a layup. But it would be fun. Because you remember in 2008 when Arizona needed a win to get to their first bowl game in a decade. They needed to beat ASU, and ASU was in the same boat. It'd be fun if it was the same situation this year. If Arizona had 5 wins going into that game, which is a scenario I would jump on at this point.
Absolutely.
And a chance to go to a bowl game, just that would add to the hype of a game that already is, hype for plenty of reasons.
I would be disappointed if Arizona goes into that game at 3 wins with our earlier question, buy or sell. Just win this week and worry about next week when the time comes. Let's hopefully have some good stories to talk about in buy or sell on next week's show. But coming up next, let's talk to the great analyst, Barrett Baker, and have him explain to us what the heck went wrong on defense for Arizona on Saturday here on Wildcat Country. Scooby, we sent you an ice shaker. They are a sponsor, courtesy of our buddy Chris Gronkowski. You have it right there.
I love my ice shaker. Fun fact: when I trained with Glenn Gronkowski, everybody, when we were trained together, people thought I was the other Gronk brother. So it's kind of funny. But yes, I love my ice shaker. It is very good. I use it every day. I am a veteran to the ice shaker game, by the way.
What's up, Wildcat Country? Chris Gronkowski here. Use coupon code Wildcat Country at iceshaker.com.
Shane, we say back by popular demand, or you've heard that phrase, but actually on Wildcat Country, it actually means something this time. I mean, the last time we had Barrett Baker on after the San Diego State game, people were private messaging you and I, were writing on the YouTube page, on Twitter, how good of an interview that was and what great analysis. And I'm serious about this, not kidding at all. So Barrett, thank you for coming back on with us. I know you'll be a frequent guest with us, but really it's not only did we enjoy it, but the listeners did as well. So we're glad to have you back on. Unfortunately, as Shane said before we actually started recording here, we wish it was under better circumstances. That was really a bad performance on Saturday, especially defensively. When you were watching a game like that, being a guy that, former special teams captain, guy that was used to tackling players, when you watch the abhorrent tackling from Arizona, how angry do you get when you're sitting in front of your TV?
I think it's just frustrating because, there's three phases to the game. There's offense, defense, and special teams. You got to win 2 of the 3 to give yourself a shot at it. We basically did that. And we're just talking about a few plays, a few stops that if you get that stop on a critical third down, then you're off the field. Instead, you miss a tackle in the backfield. It extends their drive. It ends up ending up in a touchdown. And we just saw that in the second and the third quarter, and the momentum went the wrong way because I really feel like offensively we were clicking. We had the momentum, and there is a frustration because you think, get off the field, guys. You got them in third and long or whatever it is behind the chains, but it just seemed like, and you got to give credit to Musgrave, and sometimes, things work out for the other team regardless of the call that you made. But it seemed like when we brought a blitz, we were 2 steps short. They got it off. When we had them pinned and had to get that critical stop versus the run, what do you know? We gave up a gap. We missed a tackle. They were able to extend the chain. So it was a frustrating game. I think that is probably the term that I would use because that game really was there. If we end the half getting 7 points instead of 3, if we start the third quarter, and I know Coach Fish had talked about that, the last, did he say 8 minutes of the second quarter and beginning of the third quarter? Well, we didn't do what we wanted to do in this case.
Yeah, Barrett, let's talk more about the defense. In our first segment, Eric and I discussed how this team has given up more and more yards per play every game so far. The rushing defense was historically bad against Cal in terms of yards per carry allowed. Where does the blame lie? Is it just lack of experience? Is it the scheme? Is it the players? A combination thereof? What are your thoughts?
I mean, if we had the answers to that and it was a simple solution, I think that we probably would have fixed it after 4 games. So I think it's a little bit of a combination of a few things. But it starts with the front 7. You got to be physical up front, and you got to be able to hold the line of scrimmage and shed those blocks and make some tackles at the line of scrimmage. And if you don't do that, you got to keep your linebackers clean. And if your linebackers are getting reached second level, now you have trouble because now we've got holes that are getting to the third level. So that's just bad defense. So that front 7, I think against North Dakota State, what they're going to do. We tried to match that by putting Manu in and taking Maldonado out and doing some substitutions to go power against power. And when they were going to go past, then we try to put in a nickel. Nansen is trying to do things like that. I think you see Manu and Maldonado switching out a lot. So schematically, I think we're trying to match their personnel. But at the end of the day, we just kind of got our tails kicked up front. Cal had some big boys up front. They haven't had a real dominant offensive line. But I think we do need to go back and give a little credit to them. What was their loss? Notre Dame. And they gave Notre Dame everything that they had. And Notre Dame, regardless of whether good or bad, they're going to always be a strong physical team. And so I'll give a little bit of credit to California. But at the end of the day, Bars and Shand and Wilson and Harris and Eccles, and then the 3 linebackers. And I always say this, right? I don't make anything personal. But at the end of the day, let's take a look at number 11. Has he jumped off the page at anybody after 4 games for us? I would say no. Roberts had played pretty solid football, didn't have his best game the other day against Cal. Manu, again, where did he come from? I mean, literally, he was not on anyone's radar during fall camp. He was a late arrival, and now all of a sudden he's logging some serious snaps. So that's a great thing in some regards that you're having young guys contribute, and a terrible thing in other regards, because that means that Solomon and Reed and Allen and Ward from Washington and all of these other guys have gotten passed over. And that's not great. So we just need to do a little bit better job, I think, of shedding blocks, filling gaps, being in the right fits, as they say, and making the play when it's there to be made.
Yeah, I'll tell you, Barrett, I'd be willing to give Cal more credit if they hadn't just slipped by UNLV 2 weeks ago. But I take your point. Let's switch to the offensive side of the ball, starting with Jaden DeLora. He's kind of yo-yoed throughout the season. Certainly the promises there. He made, Pro Football Focus said he made the most, big time throws last weekend of any Power 5 quarterback. What are your overall thoughts on him the third of the season so far?
I think Coach Fish really hit on that in the press conference, where he said he's got to learn that he can't get it all back in one play. But I will tell you, I just think that we have a legitimately good offense. I think that if you try to take the run away from us, that we've got 3 wide receivers with Cowing, Singer, and McMillan. And then you've got a tight end that has come out of nowhere and been a huge difference maker for us with Tanner McLaughlin. I mean, he looks athletic. He's big, he's strong, he's fast, and he's winning matchups. So between the passing game, that's been something that's very, very, which pick your poison. Which of those are you going to take away? And then Wiley, I think, is playing at a very high level. And then the Florida State transfer, when he's gotten the reps and been able to get into a little bit of a rhythm, I think that you're getting productivity there. And then Jonah Coleman for a freshman. So offensively, I know that the offensive line was a little bit of a question mark coming in. But to me, the only game that they really haven't held their own physically was against Mississippi State. Because they really made us one-dimensional. But the other 3 games, man, we are doing what we want to do on offense, and I really have no complaints. I think the red zone, we've been better. The third down conversions, we've been better. The running game outside of Mississippi State, I'm excited about the offense. I think they're going to continue to get better. I think you see a lot of potential with DeLora. And again, Coach Fish has talked about that. They will get better together. They will get better working together and understanding that, don't throw the ball into trouble on first or second down. Live to fight another day. And I think he has that gunslinger mentality, which is a 50-50, because sometimes you praise it and sometimes you think, why did you do that?
Barrett, how would you characterize this team as far as your expectations before the season? Are they better than you thought? Are they about the same, or are they worse?
I would say better, because we have to remember that they were 1-11 last year, and their one game, it doesn't have an asterisk, but it was against California,
right?
But one win. We've won 2 games, and I don't think that we were in another league from Cal. I mean, we're winning at halftime. We just have a terrible third and fourth quarter, really third quarter. And Mississippi State, again, a minute to go in the third quarter, we've got the ball down on the 30-yard line, down by 8. When we have I say fluky interception, but a great play by them. We have been in every game this year. I think the team, and just talking to some of the guys and going to some of the practices, there's a belief on the team that they're better. I think there's a chemistry on the team where the guys are going to bat for each other and having a little bit more of that family attitude. And I think, our better days are ahead. We're going to win some games for the next couple of games that people were not expecting us to. But obviously it starts with Colorado on Saturday. And we were humbled a little bit this past weekend that you have to play 4 quarters of physical football. Don't forget that we lost to Colorado last year, and we're a different team.
Got shut
and
out,
they're a
right?
different team. Yeah,
Got shut, we shut out.
We had a face. Yeah, we did
it.
we did a live video afterwards where for a while.
Right.
It was 30-0, I think, was the final. Yeah.
Just bad football. So we better not go into this game thinking that we've arrived, because we better show up on the first play and make them doubt the fact that they can win in the first 3 minutes of the game, because they're not a very good football team this year. They're starting a true freshman quarterback. I think
they stink.
Period.
They're awful. Yeah.
So if we've made that transition to where we're better, then show it from the beginning and leave no doubt and get the crowd in the game. And that's kind of my expectation for Saturday.
My expectation is to get out of there early in the fourth quarter so I can drive back up north. That's what I think this game is going to be. I think Arizona is going to blow the doors off them. Shane and I will give our picks later on. But I expect to be in my car by about the 7-8 minute mark of the fourth.
What they say, Eric, our frustrations are a product of our expectations, right?
Okay. Well, my expectations are great this week, as Barrett said. All right. So Barrett,
Eric,
you talked to, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, to that point though,
Yeah.
I'm going to be there in the fourth quarter because this game is the game that we finally see who our reserves are, right? This is the game that we're up by 24 in the fourth quarter, and we can actually have the coaches trust our second team guys to get that experience under the lights. Because I do think that is probably my one gripe that I would say so far. And Coach Fish is very clear about this. You play your best players, but we've got to get some other kids involved because it's a long season. And I don't want the seventh game of the season to be the first time that someone's taken a rep.
No, I agree with that. And if we're only up 24, I'm staying because I always have the rule that you must, once the spread is determined, then I can get out of there. So if it's 24, then it was still in question as a 17 and a half, 18-point spread. All right. You talked about other games that Arizona very well could win this season. We got Oregon coming up next. You got Colorado, obviously. We assume that's going to be a win. You got Oregon next week, and it starts this gauntlet of games with Washington and USC and UCLA and Utah, then Washington State and Arizona State. What is a realistic ceiling for wins for Arizona at this point?
Well, let me throw out an old Dick Tomeyism. Guys, the best team doesn't always win. The team that plays the best wins. And pretty simple, right?
Okay.
But when I look at UCLA, I don't see a team that I think we're not in the same league as them.
Great.
Washington State, again, good team, solid team. But I don't feel like there's any game out there on our schedule based off the first four games and the talent level and what we've shown on offense that I have the feeling like, well, we shouldn't even show up. Is Washington playing at a high level? Of course they are. But, what happens if you get a couple of turnovers in a game? The great equalizer. And I think that when I look at the schedule, on paper, we shouldn't win very many of them, right? We will beat ASU this year. We will stomp the Mustard and Rust. We will come up with two other wins, I'd say, that are just surprises. But that was what Arizona football's always been. There's always some game out there that someone thinks, well, we don't have much of a chance. And guess what? At the end of the 60 minutes, we're the ones that got the win. So the UCLA, ASU, Washington State, I think there's some games out there that we will surprise some people. We've just got to get that defense shored up and get some more stops.
Something that's stuck in my head for a long time, Barrett. A guy I used to work with at ABC 15. He wasn't an Arizona fan, but they were playing one night and we were talking and Arizona was losing. And he said, Arizona was always good for one big upset per year. And that seems like it's true, like most years. Sometimes it's even ASU. But I agree with you. I think there'll be a surprise in there at least somewhere. My last question, since we're talking about ASU, your thoughts on what's going on up in Tempe, and just, are you a guy who would rather both teams be good when they play each other, or would you rather ASU just have a miserable season and then we just kick them all while they're down?
I'd pretty much prefer that. The second, we went through a very, very difficult time, to say the least, over the last 3 years. I don't think any Arizona fan will ever forget the score, which I'm not going to repeat because there's no reason to put us all in a bad mood.
We remember.
But that was the bottom of it. That was a very personal thing that makes me ill when I think about it. It makes me upset that their fan base gets to hold that over our head for the rest of my life. And I would like retribution. I would like revenge on that. So when we play them, that would be my expectation, that we beat them 71-7. And if that's the case, then I'm going to be a happy camper. So
you want so if we're up by like 6 touchdowns in that game in the fourth quarter, you want Jed to keep throwing the ball? Then is that what you're saying?
I would just say that that there's a lot of fans and there's a lot of alumni that would be appreciative of that. And I don't hate them personally, as in like the kids on their squad, but as a program, I would be very pleased if they didn't win another game.
Fair enough.
Well, and they very well might not. Shane and I were talking about that earlier. But so for you, when you think about that game in 2020, it's about the score going forward to equal that out, right? Like, so here's an example that I'm going to make. Arizona's loss to NAU last year was bad, but ASU's loss, considering their expectations, they're still thinking they're a bowl caliber team, to Eastern Michigan, and giving up 270 yards to a MAC team on the ground, some guy on the MAC on the ground. I mean, that was kind of their Eastern Michigan moment. So does Arizona have to beat ASU 71-7 to make you feel better about it? Or is there, as Shane kind of asked, what would kind of validate that going forward, where we just both sides forget about it?
I would like that, but at the end of the day, I will say this: the only thing that matters in that game is winning. So it's sugar on top if you pound them and the scoreboard, at halftime, because we always will remember the fact that, we beat them without having to pass the ball one time in the second half when Brandon Dawkins was there. That was our thing that we could always talk about. Well, there's not much that we can ever do to defend the 70-7. So the win is the most important thing, and that just has to take place. The second part of that, if we do something to where it's a memorable thing for the fans, then so be it. But I just want that win. And I think we're there. I think the programs are obviously going in different directions. I wish that they would have held on to Herm a little bit longer, because I think you can really see.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Between the recruiting and just the on-field, we're going in different directions. So I would have rather them hold on to him a little bit longer to widen that gap. But to your point, Shane, if we're both equal and we're both 8-win teams and next year, and then after that, maybe someday there's a bowl on the line and we get to knock them out of the bowl, then that's a great feeling as well.
You mentioned Herm, Barrett. This is my last question. You mentioned Herm. I wanted to see Herm stay just so Arizona could get a level of revenge on him, because he was undefeated against the Wildcats. Did you feel the same way as a proud alumnus of the program? Like, hey, I want this guy to go out with a loss,
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to dislike Herm Edwards. I think he's he had been well received by everybody, and he was a motivational speaker and this and that. I'm former teammates with Antonio Pierce. It's difficult to say I don't like you, Antonio. Bobby Wade's on their staff. Bobby's a great guy, but he's putting food on the table for his family. So, I'm clouding that question, but at the end of the day, it's hard to dislike him personally. But yes, I wanted to make sure that he lost to Arizona in football, so he didn't have that asterisk next to his name that he never lost to us. So I'm disappointed that he didn't get to finish out the year. I'm disappointed that he didn't get the L as his last game before they made the change in coaching. And that's the way it goes. But the damage has been done to that program. And I say that in all sincerity, that he damaged that program. They bent the rules. The NCAA is looking into that. They did things you're not supposed to do, and that tarnishes your reputation. And so, that's the end of them. I'm excited about Coach Fish. I'm excited about the direction of our program. I'm excited about Saturday, and we're going to good places.
All right. I got one last one that you just kind of came up with. It's a two-part question. Did you lose respect for Herm the way he ran it up against Arizona? And would you lose respect for a Jed Fish if he were to do the same against ASU, knowing that they have an interim coach? That I'm just curious.
I would say no, because this is the fact. There's 100 Wildcats on that team, and 100 Wildcats that have to fight to prevent the other team from putting 70 points on you. And that's looking in the mirror and saying never again. So we could say that they ran it up against us, but at the end of the day, you know how you stop a team running it up against you? Stop them.
Stop them. Yeah.
Stop them. And watching that game, it was, like I said, it was disgusting, because I do feel like we quit. And I never want to see that again for our program. I don't think it will ever happen again. But that's something that's on film, and it lives forever. And I think that's important for our program today and our players to know what is the history of Wildcat football, what happened on that night, and make sure that never happens again. Because I would much rather see Chuck Cecil's 108-yard interception return blasting around, and I would much rather know that personally I was 2-0 against them compared to having seen some garbage like that.
And there you have it right there. That's why he is the best football analyst that we have on this program. Barrett Baker, former special teams captain, and now I believe is it fire captain? Is that the right terminology for you? I always got to get that right.
By the letter of the law, I'm lucky to be the deputy chief of operations for Tucson Fire, and really enjoying things there.
I'm going to try to remember that for next time. Barrett, always glad to have you on the show.
Appreciate it, guys. Bear down. Let's get that win on Saturday.
want to thank Barrett Baker for joining us here. Always great insight from him. And we kind of went off the deep end there. Shane talking about ASU and Arizona in 2020. I didn't expect to go there, but just interesting with the Herm Edwards thing, just to discuss.
We took where the winds took us.
Yes,
we went where the winds took us. And Barrett's like I said, fantastic analysis. Fans aren't going to be disappointed by this one either. Thanks, Barrett, and hopefully you and Barrett will get a chance to meet up at the game this Saturday.
I would look forward to that. Now it is time for our game picks. We have 12 of them. We're going to go quickly for 11 of them, and then we'll wait for Arizona, Colorado. We'll do a little bit more deeper analysis. Last week, I was 9-3 against the spread. You were 5-7. I now have a 5-game advantage on you.
Well,
but in games that count, Shane, we are both 1-3 against the spread and straight up for Arizona games.
yeah.
I have a feeling we're going to improve at least one of those categories this week. So let's go with the first ones quickly. Washington is giving 3.5 at UCLA on Friday night. Who you got?
Washington giving it 3.5 at UCLA. Washington. UCLA, I think it's a fraud. I think they get exposed.
I think Washington can run the table. I honestly do. I think they're good enough. Michael Penix Jr., maybe a dark horse Heisman Trophy candidate. I threw a couple bucks on him. And I wrote that up in my Sportsline column this week. Check that out, sportsline.com.
Good play.
And thank you. So I like Washington by at least a touchdown here. The UCLA downfall, as Shane and I discussed in the first segment, begins now. Kentucky at Ole Miss, and Ole Miss is favored by 6.5 down at the Grove. Kentucky, number 7 in the nation. Remember who is on that staff, Shane? Mark Stoops and his brother Mike is now coaching on Mark's staff. Who you got?
I didn't know that. That's news to me. Okay, well, that's
Yep.
cool. Well, I was going to go with Kentucky anyway, but I'm going to take them now. I'm kind of surprised by the line there. I think Kentucky got a bit of a wake-up call. They struggled way too much this past weekend, but I think they take care of business this weekend.
I'm taking Kentucky outright to beat Ole Miss, so I don't even need the 6.5 points. I'll take them outright, but for the purposes of these predictions, we'll go with the 6.5. Speaking of 6.5, Oklahoma, who shockingly lost to Kansas State last week at home, is giving 6.5 at TCU. Another Wildcat connection, Sonny Dykes, former offensive coordinator when Mike and Mark Stoops were there, is the head coach of TCU. Who you got, Oklahoma minus 6.5 or TCU?
Well, K-State is actually upset Oklahoma a lot over the years, which is kind of weird. But I think the Sooners bounce back. I'm going to take Oklahoma.
And by the way, I'm taking Oklahoma as well. And by the way, I believe Mike Stoops did go to Kansas State, or no, he went to Iowa, but he coached at Kansas State, I believe. So something like that, right? So there's always the Oklahoma-Kansas State connection.
It's a rich tapestry, the coaching tree. Yeah.
Yes. Oregon State played USC real tough last week, heading to Utah. Utah's a 10.5 point favorite. I just don't think Oregon State is as good as everybody thinks they are. They played the Trojans tough. I'm taking Utah laying those points against Oregon State. How about you, Shane?
This is probably the toughest line for me because I really am still an Oregon State believer. They probably should have won that game in Corvallis. I think it's going to be a lower scoring game. I believe in Utah's defense, but not so much their offense. I think Oregon State can cover. I'm going to go with the Beavers to cover. Not win, but cover.
All right. Utah stays with one loss and undefeated in the Pac-12, but they won't cover according to you. I think they will. Alabama beat Arkansas last year at home by 7 points, 42-35. They're now giving 17 on the road this year. Don't really understand why this line is as it is. I'm taking Arkansas with the points. How about you?
I'm going to go Bama. I think that they got a wake-up call early in the season against Texas. I think they've righted the ship. I think they'll run away with this one.
Oklahoma State, a team that I liked as a dark horse for the Big 12 at the start of the year, is on the road at Baylor. Baylor has one loss to BYU, and they're giving 2.5 points to Oklahoma State at home, taking Oklahoma State straight up in the upset. How about you?
Same. Yeah, I think Baylor's a bit overrated. BYU isn't that good either, so I don't think that was as good a loss as it looked like at the time. So I'm going to go with the OK State.
I'm not sure this game is going to be played. Wake Forest at Florida State. Florida State is a 6.5 point favorite. Best of luck to those of you if you're listening and in the path of Hurricane Ian in Florida or the Southeast. Hope it isn't as bad as expected. If the game is played, Florida State minus 6.5, Shane, against Wake Forest. Who you got?
I think that loss to Clemson is really kind of demoralizing for Wake Forest. So I'm going to go with Florida State to cover if and when that game takes place.
I think Florida State is overrated. I think Wake Forest can win this game outright, but what will the field conditions look like as Wake Forest is a passing team?
Yeah.
Still going to take them with the points, but I'm not as confident as I previously would have been in better weather. Interesting game here, Shane. Washington State coming off a loss, but a miracle backdoor cover for those of you who are watching, and I had that. You did not, unfortunately, last week. They are a 4-point favorite at home against Cal. Does Cal keep the momentum going, or are you taking Washington State with the points?
One of the easiest predictions. I still don't buy Cal as being that good. I think that was more about Arizona's shortcomings than anything else. So I'm going to go with Washington State. Easy pick for me.
I'm surprised. I thought you would struggle with this one. I'm taking Washington State easy as well. One of my plays of the week. I really like the Cougars here. A team that I've been big on throughout, even before the season, NC State is at Clemson. Clemson is giving 7 points. The weather is supposed to be miserable in Clemson because of the hurricane on Saturday. I'm taking NC State with the points. I don't know if they can win the game like I once predicted, but I'm sticking with them in a close 3 or 4 point game, low scoring. College game day will be there maybe. What do you got?
Yeah, well, I've been on the fence on this one, but now that I know which way you're going, I need to catch up. I'm going to go with Clemson just for that super scientific reason alone.
Okay, fair enough. I like that. Stanford is a 16.5 point underdog at Oregon. I'm not big on the Ducks this week. Maybe they'll get caught looking ahead to Arizona. I don't know. I think they're probably going to underestimate Stanford, who, by the way, their running back EJ Smith, Emmett's son, out for the season. I'm taking Stanford plus the points. Won't win the game, but keep it closer than 17 points. So I'm taking Stanford. How about you, Shane?
Interesting. I thought you would have gone the other way with that, but I think Oregon covers. Stanford, I think, is the second or third worst team. I think they're worse than Arizona. I wish the Wildcats had a chance to play Stanford this year, but I'm going to go Oregon.
All right. Speaking of bad teams in the conference, we know Colorado's the worst. Is ASU the second worst? Quite possibly. USC is now minus 26 against ASU. I'm actually going to take the Sun Devils to cover. I know USC has been a covering machine, but I feel like ASU is bad, but maybe get a garbage time touchdown to backdoor cover and lose by 24. So reluctantly, I'm taking ASU with the points there. Yeah,
that's tricky. It's kind of the same thing with Utah. If ASU had gotten one more garbage time touchdown, they would have covered there. So I'm with you. I think USC wins comfortably, but they're up 31 late, and ASU gets a garbage time TD, they cover. So yeah, I'll take ASU to cover.
All right. And finally, Colorado is at Arizona. The Wildcats, shockingly, are 17.5 point favorites, or that's what we use for the column because it's fluctuated between 17 and 18 early in the week. We're recording this on Tuesday night. Shane, give me a score prediction and just a couple things to look for.
Well, usually when I pick my team to win and they don't, I'm like, well, I'm never going to pick them again, but I have to pick them against Colorado. It's just a matter of whether they cover the spread. Colorado is awful against the run, so this will give Arizona, or they're awful running the ball, which should give Arizona a chance to get things right there. They got a true freshman quarterback starting the game. Is it Josh McCown's son? Who's there?
It is Luke McCown.
Luke McCown's son. Excuse me.
Yeah.
Josh
no, excuse me. No, it's Josh McCown's son.
It is Josh McCown.
Owen McCown. I think it's Owen McCown. I'm sorry. Yes.
And he actually did okay against UCLA. I mean, there was some garbage time stuff in there, so it's kind of hard to say. But I will predict that Colorado will get on the board first, and we're all going to panic. But I think just because I feel like that it'll go that way. Like maybe they'll score a field goal or a touchdown first. Arizona will win. I mean, they sure as hell better win. But I can't just. After seeing them against Cal, I can't pick them to cover the spread. So I'm going to hedge a bit, say Arizona wins, but Colorado covers.
You want to give me a score range?
Sure. Let's do something in the range of 34-21, Arizona.
Okay. All right. I actually see this game differently, Shane. I think Arizona, this is going to be our week where everything looks great. Everything is right. The Wildcats do everything perfect on offense. Colorado does not score first. This game reminds me of the homecoming game. I think it was 2012 or 2013 where Kadeem Carey had like almost 300 yards rushing, like that.
BJ Denker made a spot start. I think that was 2012. BJ Denker made a spot start for Matt Scott.
That's right. It was after that USC game, I think.
And Carey went off and just had set a Pac-12 record. Yep.
Yep. I think this is going to be that type of game. I think Arizona wins this game 45-17, and I don't think it will be that close. I think it'll be like 45-10, and Colorado gets a touchdown in the fourth quarter that's meaningless. I will be out of there midway in the fourth quarter and headed back towards the Phoenix area. It's going to be a nice, comfortable win, which God knows, Shane, we haven't seen one of those at Arizona Stadium in a long time. Even the one that I saw in San Diego just didn't feel, I mean, we were up by a lot, but you were like, well, when is the sky going to fall? Not going to happen this week. Arizona wins big, and I'm putting my money where my mouth is. I will tell you that.
Wish I had your confidence, Eric, but like I said, our frustrations are a product of our expectations. And you just, when it seems like everything should go right, this is the way it should be, something else happens. The problem with conventional wisdom is that it's so often wrong. They should beat Colorado as comfortably as you're saying. I just have a feeling it's going to be more difficult than it should be. That's all.
Big win, Arizona, 45-17. Shane staying a little bit closer. Thanks to our buddy Barrett Baker for joining us. Great analysis as usual. For Shane Dale, I am Eric Cohen. As always, bear down.